The doctor stared at my blood test results for a little too long, and that was the first moment I knew something was very wrong. I've been to doctors my whole life. I've seen that look when it's bad cholesterol, or a little high blood pressure, or a reminder to lose 10 pounds. This wasn't that look. This was a look I'd only seen on people's faces at funerals. She finally turned the screen away from her and toward me, then stopped herself and turned it back again, like she'd changed her mind. "Is your husband in the waiting room?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said. "He always comes with me now." "Why?" She didn't answer. She just stood up, walked to the door of the exam room, and opened it a crack. "Mr. Carter?" she called with that calm professional smile. "Would you mind giving us just a moment? I need to discuss a few things privately with your wife. I'll bring you in after." I could see him through the gap. Daniel, neatly dressed, hands folded over his phone, the picture of a concerned, patient husband. He jumped to his feet. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "I should really be in there. She gets anxious. I'm the one who usually explains things to her." It sounded caring if you didn't know him, if you didn't live with him. The doctor didn't flinch. "I just need 5 minutes," she said. "I'll bring you right back in." He looked at me. I tried to keep my face blank. My heart was starting to pound, and I didn't know why. Finally, he nodded. "Of course," he said. "I'll be right here." The doctor closed the door, and very quietly, I heard the soft click of the lock. That sound is burned into my memory. She came back to her chair and sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap. "Can you tell me," she asked, "what medications you are taking right now? Not what your husband says you're taking. What you know you are taking." I frowned. "Just my blood pressure pill," I said. "The vitamin D you put me on last year. Sometimes melatonin if I can't sleep. Over the counter from the pharmacy. That's it." She watched my face as I talked, looking for any sign of a lie. "Nothing for anxiety," she said. "Nothing for sleep besides melatonin? No mood stabilizers, no sedatives, nothing another doctor prescribed?" "No," I said. "I don't like pills. I barely like the ones you give me." I tried to joke, but my voice came out thin. She turned the monitor slightly, like she was going to show me, then turned it back again. Instead, she spoke very slowly. "Your blood," she said, "is telling me a different story." My mouth went dry. On the screen, I could see lines of text and numbers I couldn't make sense of. She tapped one with her finger. "This," she said, "is a sedative. A strong one. This level is too high for someone who took a single pill. It suggests you've been getting it regularly." She slid her finger down to another line. "And this is a mood stabilizer. Also prescription only. Also not from me. And not in any of your records." For a second, my brain just stopped. "I don't take those," I whispered. "I've never taken those. I don't even know what they look like." She leaned closer. "I believe you," she said. "That's why I asked your husband to leave the room." The walls seemed to move closer by an inch. "Are you saying," I asked slowly, "that someone is putting this in me without me knowing?" She nodded once. "I'm saying 2 controlled medications are in your system at levels that don't match anything you've been prescribed. And I'm saying your husband called my office before this visit. He told my nurse you've been paranoid and unstable. He asked me to look for anything that might support a psychiatric evaluation. He suggested you might be a danger to yourself." For a moment I couldn't breathe. "He said that." I finally managed. "About me?" "He did," she said. "He was very convincing." She let that word hang. "I need you to understand how serious this is. If someone is secretly giving you these medications, it can explain the fogginess, the memory problems, the sudden mood swings you described. It can also make it very easy to label you as crazy if anything happens." "Anything like what?" I asked, though I already knew I didn't want the answer. Her eyes held mine. "Like an accident at home," she said. "Like a fall down the stairs. Like driving off the road. Like being found unresponsive and your husband telling the ER you were depressed." The exam room suddenly felt too small, too bright, too cold. "This could be a lab error," I said weakly. "You could have someone mixed my sample up with someone else's." "We already reran it," she replied. "Twice. Same results. I wish I could tell you it was a mistake." I pressed my hands into my thighs to stop them shaking. "Daniel makes me tea," I heard myself say. "At night, and sometimes shakes in the morning. He says I forget to eat. He pours my wine for me. Sometimes brings me water when I'm working." I swallowed. "Are you telling me he could be?" I couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't finish it for me. "I can't accuse anyone from this chair," she said. "But I can tell you what the science shows. And I can tell you this, I don't think you're safe going home with him today. The words landed like a physical object between us. Heavy. Solid. I can't just not go home, I said. He's in the waiting room. My car is with him. My house is with him. My life is with him. Your life is exactly what I'm worried about, she replied softly. Listen to me. Right now you are awake, oriented, and telling me you did not knowingly take these drugs. Right now you are in a place where I can document that. If you walk out of here and something happens, your husband will be the narrator of that story. Not you. Something clicked in my mind then. A feeling I'd had for months, maybe years, finally snapping into place. What are you saying? I whispered. She took a breath. I am saying, she answered, that I am going to order a full toxicology panel. I am going to document that you denied taking these medications. I am going to flag your chart so no one can quietly alter it. And I am going to call a hospital social worker into this room. Right now. And I am going to ask you, as your doctor, not to leave this building with your husband today. My first instinct was to defend him. He's not a monster, I said. He cooks. He cleans. He takes care of me. He's the reason I came in today. I know what he looks like from the outside, she said gently. I'm asking you what it has felt like on the inside. Not last week. Not last month. The last year. I thought about the last year. The way my memory had started slipping. The evenings that vanished into a heavy sleep I couldn't explain. The way he'd started speaking for me. The way I'd stopped seeing my sister and friends because it was too much drama. The way my bank apps no longer worked on my phone because he'd simplified things. The way he looked disappointed every time I tried to stand up for myself. I'm tired all the time, I said quietly. I forget things I used to remember. I get lost driving places I've been going to for 10 years. I cry for no reason. I thought it was getting older. Maybe depression. I told him I should see someone, and he said he'd talk to you first. He did talk to me first, she replied. And he told me you make up stories and twist things. He told me not to take anything you say too seriously. That was when my fear turned into something else. Not anger yet. Something colder. So what do? I asked. Walk out the back door and sleep in my car? She shook her head. You don't have to do this alone, she said. Do you have any family nearby you trust? Any friend? Anyone he doesn't have influence over? I realized with a horrible sinking feeling that the true answer was no. I had a sister 2 states away. A friend I texted sometimes but rarely saw. Neighbors I waved to but never really knew. I had let my world shrink down to the size of our house and his routines. I don't know who I'd call, I admitted. Then we start here, she said. With us. With a social worker whose job is literally to help women in situations like this. I flinched at that word. Women in situations like this. Of course I'd seen them. On TV. In articles people shared online. In stories I half listened to when coworkers whispered at lunch. I had never once pictured myself in that category. If I don't go home with him, he'll know something is wrong, I said. He'll get angry. He hates surprises. He doesn't have to know everything today, she said. When I open that door, I'm going to tell him we saw something off in your labs and want to rerun them. I'll ask him to go to the front desk to fix some insurance details. While he's distracted, our social worker will come in through the other door. She nodded at a second door I hadn't even noticed, half hidden behind a curtain. You will not tell him about the medications we found. You will not tell him about this conversation. Not yet. Not until you're somewhere safe, with someone on your side. I'm not good at lying, I whispered. You don't have to lie, she said. You just don't have to tell him everything. The labs were a little weird, they want me to come back. That's all you need to say. I stared at the floor. The linoleum pattern blurred. Okay, I finally said. I'll do what you say. She stood. I'm going to get her, she said. Take a deep breath. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. And you are not alone anymore. She unlocked the door and opened it, her face back in polite doctor mode. Mr. Carter, she called. He appeared almost instantly, like a dog that had been waiting at the door. Yes. Everything looks mostly fine, she said with an easy smile. A few minor things I want to recheck. Could you stop by the front desk and update some insurance information and sign a release? It will take 5 or 10 minutes. Is she all right? He asked, eyes sliding past her to me. I tried to keep my face as blank as possible. She's fine, the doctor said. We're just being thorough. She'll be out soon. He nodded. Of course, he said. Whatever you need. I'll handle it. He gave me the same warm, familiar smile he'd given me 1,000 times. See, he said. Told you it would be nothing. I'll be right back, honey. The words hit differently this time. Like lines in a play I was suddenly seeing from backstage. He disappeared down the hall. The doctor closed the door again quietly. "She'll be in a moment," she said. "If at any point you change your mind and want to leave with him, I can't stop you. But I hope you don't." And then she was gone, too. For the first time in a long time, I was completely unobserved. No eyes on me. No ears listening at a door. Just me, a paper gown, the smell of disinfectant, and the knowledge that my own blood had just told on someone I loved. I sat there and replayed the last year in my head, and all the tiny things that had felt off, but never solid enough to grab onto. The tea that knocked me out faster than wine. The mornings I woke up more tired than when I went to bed. The bottle of melatonin that emptied faster than I remembered taking it. The time I found a pill on the kitchen floor and he snapped, "Don't touch that," a little too quickly, then brushed it into the trash with his foot. The way the pharmacist had looked at us funny once when he stepped up to the counter instead of me. The way he had laughed it off. "I'm her secretary, I do all her errands now." It was like someone had turned on a light in a room I'd been stumbling through in the dark. And the first thing I saw clearly was that I was in more danger at home than anywhere else. A soft knock came from the second door, behind the curtain. I jumped. It opened a few inches, and a woman with warm brown skin, tired eyes, and a badge on a lanyard stepped in. "Hi," she said quietly. "My name's Karen. I'm one of the hospital social workers. Your doctor thought you might like someone in your corner today." I almost cried just from hearing those words. In my corner. It had been a long time since I felt like anyone was standing there. "I don't know what I'm doing," I said. "I feel like I walked into this office as a wife, and I'm walking out as I don't even know what." She moved a little closer, but not too close, like she'd done this before and knew not to crowd people. "Right now," she said, "you are a woman who just got new information. That's all. You don't have to have your whole life figured out in the next 10 minutes. We take this one step at a time. My husband is signing forms at the front desk," I said. "He thinks we're going home together in a few minutes. The doctor says I shouldn't go home with him. Where am I supposed to go?" "Do you have anyone you trust?" she asked. "Family, friend, neighbor, coworker?" I thought of my sister, 2 states away with 2 kids and a small house. I thought of my old friend from work I'd stopped seeing because Daniel said she was a bad influence. I thought of the older woman in my building who always said hello in the elevator and had given me soup once when I was sick. They all felt so far away. "I haven't spoken to my sister on the phone, really spoken in months," I said. "He always says I get too worked up after. My friends, I've been too busy to see them for a long time. I don't even know if they'd pick up." Karen nodded, like this was an answer she heard a lot. "That's okay," she said. "We have emergency options. There's a safe lodging program in this city for women in unsafe situations. It's not a shelter with a big sign on the door. It's regular apartments scattered around. We can get you a bed for tonight. Maybe a few nights. We can help you call your sister when you're there. We can help you figure out money. But first, we get you out of here safely. Won't he just follow me?" I asked. "He has my car. He has the keys to our apartment. He has access to everything. He'll know something is wrong the second I don't walk out that door." "He doesn't have to know everything today," she said. "We can walk you out a different exit with security. We can tell him you were admitted for observation because of something in your blood, which is technically true. The hospital can restrict visitors if there's a safety concern. Once you're at the safe place, we can talk about restraining orders, changing locks, emergency access to your own accounts. But you don't need to solve 12 problems at once. Right now we solve one, going home with him or not." I stared at my hands. They were shaking so hard now that the paper crinkled under my fingers. "I never thought I'd be this woman," I said. "The one sitting in a little room with a social worker because her husband might be poisoning her." "No one thinks they'll be this woman," Karen replied. "Abusive people don't start with poison. They start with charm, with fixing things, with carrying groceries, with let me handle it. By the time you see the pattern, you're already deep inside it." Her words hit me with a strange mix of shame and relief. Shame that I hadn't seen it sooner. Relief that someone was finally naming what my gut had been whispering for months. What if I'm overreacting? I asked, my last line of defense. What if there's some other explanation? What if he really was just trying to help me sleep and got it wrong? She tilted her head. "If you found out your neighbor had unprescribed sedatives and mood drugs in her blood she didn't know she was taking," she asked, "and her husband had been telling everyone she was unstable, would you tell her she's overreacting?" I didn't have an answer. Not a good one. No, I muttered. I'd tell her to run. Sometimes, Karen said softly, we owe ourselves the same advice we'd give a stranger. Somewhere out in the hallway, I heard Daniel's laugh. It came through the wall muffled, but I knew it. I'd heard it 100 times at parties, in waiting rooms, on the phone with my mother. Karen looked toward the sound, then back at me. He's charming, isn't he? She said. Most of them are. Everyone loves him, I said. My friends. My boss. The neighbors. They all tell me how lucky I am. I almost choked on that last word. Lucky. You are lucky, she said. Just not for the reason they think. You're lucky your doctor actually looked at your labs. You're lucky the drugs didn't do more damage before we found them. You're lucky you're sitting here alive and awake with a choice. What choice? I asked. Go home and pretend I don't know? Or walk out that door and blow my whole life up? Sometimes those are the only two doors we get, she said. One of them might kill you slowly. The other one might hurt like hell for a while. But it won't kill you. A tear ran down my cheek. Then another. I hadn't even noticed I'd started crying. Okay, I said again. My voice sounded very small in that room. Okay, I won't go home with him. And just like that, a decision I never imagined making in my mid-40s was made. One sentence, and the life I'd been living up until that morning, ended. Not with a fight. Not with a slammed door. With a quiet, shaking okay in a beige exam room. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the story stopped being his, and started being mine again. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the story stopped being his, and started being mine again. Karen nodded like she'd been waiting for those words. All right, she said quietly. Then here's how we're going to do this. She laid it out step by step, like a plan on a battlefield. First, the doctor would come back in and tell me in front of him that some of my results looked off, and she wanted to keep me for observation. She wouldn't mention the drugs by name. She wouldn't say anything about him. Just observation and precaution. Second, the hospital would list me as a patient on a medical hold. That meant he couldn't just will me out of there because he felt like it. Third, while he was still thinking this was a routine overnight stay, Karen and her team would start arranging a safe place for me to go when I was discharged instead of home. You don't have to decide everything today, she said. But I need your consent for that first step. We admit you as a patient. That buys us time. What if he argues? I asked. What if he insists on taking me home? She gave a small, humorless smile. Men like that don't argue with white coats, she said. At least not at first. If the doctor says admit, he'll back down. Or he'll look controlling in front of witnesses. Either way, you get a night away from him. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Okay, I said again. Admit me. She squeezed my arm gently and slipped back out the side door. A few minutes later, the main door opened and my doctor came in with a folder in her hand and that careful neutral expression doctors use when they're about to say something you might not like. Daniel was right behind her. He didn't even glance at Karen's door. He didn't seem to realize there were two ways into this room. So, he said, walking straight to my side, what did I tell you? A whole lot of nothing, right? The doctor smiled politely. Your labs show a few things I'm not entirely happy with, she said. Nothing catastrophic, but I'd like to monitor you overnight, run a more detailed panel, and make sure we're not missing anything. He frowned. Overnight, he repeated. Is that really necessary? You know how she is. Hospitals make her anxious. She's probably just tired. I understand, she replied, still calm. But based on what I'm seeing, I'd feel more comfortable if we kept an eye on her for a short time. We can give her a private room. It won't be long. Her eyes flicked to me for half a second, just enough to say, hold your ground. I swallowed. I think it's a good idea, I said. I've been feeling off. Maybe it's time I stop pretending it's nothing. He looked at me, like he couldn't quite believe I wasn't following his script. Honey, we talked about this, he said, soft but firm. You get yourself worked up, and then every little thing feels like the end of the world. We don't need to make a big production out of this. He turned back to the doctor. Couldn't we just take her home, and I'll make sure she rests? If there's another test, we'll bring her back tomorrow. The doctor's smile didn't budge. Mr. Carter, she said, I appreciate that you want to care for your wife. But as her physician, it's my responsibility to recommend what's medically appropriate. Right now, that means a short admission. We'll keep her comfortable. She can call you as soon as she's settled. There it was. A very polite wall. He didn't like it. I saw his jaw tighten for a split second before he relaxed it again. If you really think it's necessary, he said, rubbing a hand over his face, playing the exhausted, worried husband. I won't stand in the way. I just hate seeing her here. She hates hospitals. He reached for my hand. I'll bring you your things, he said to me. Your pillow, your phone charger, your robe. You won't even notice I'm gone. His hand was warm and familiar. Once that had felt like safety. Now it felt like a rope I needed to untie myself from. That would be nice, I said. Thank you. He squeezed my fingers, then looked up at the doctor. Can I see her room? He asked. Make sure she's okay before I go? Once she's assigned, she said. For now, we'll have the nurse start her admission paperwork. You can go down to the lobby and grab a coffee. It may take a bit. He forced a smile. Coffee sounds good, he said. She'll text me if she needs anything, won't you? Of course, I lied. He kissed my forehead, then my cheek, lingering just long enough to claim ownership. Then he walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. My doctor exhaled slowly. He's very involved, she said. That's one word for it. I didn't trust myself to respond. Karen slipped back in a moment later, as if she'd been waiting just out of sight. We'll move you upstairs soon, she said. In the meantime, I need to ask you some questions for our report. Some of them might be hard to hear, but they matter. Okay, I said. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else. Have there been times in the last year, she asked carefully, when you felt you couldn't say no to something he asked you to do? Even something small. I almost laughed. Every day, I said. What does that have to do with anything? It helps us understand the pattern, she replied. When did you first notice him taking over your appointments? Your medications? Your food? As I answered, I watched her write things down in slow, neat handwriting. It felt like my life was being turned into a file. A case. Evidence. The weirdest part was, it made me feel safer. Like if it was all on paper, it couldn't just disappear into his version of events. After a while, a nurse came with a wheelchair. We're taking you up to the observation floor, she said. It's quiet there. You'll have a TV, a bathroom, everything you need. I can walk, I said out of habit. Hospital policy, she replied gently. Humor me. I climbed into the chair. Karen walked beside us as we rolled down the hallway. As we turned a corner, I caught a glimpse of Daniel at the end of the corridor by the elevators. He was talking to someone at the front desk, towels of paperwork in his hands, laughing at something the receptionist said. For a second, he looked up and our eyes met. The nurse kept rolling. Karen tucked herself between him and me like a shield. His smile faltered just for a heartbeat. He didn't move toward us. He didn't make a scene. He just watched us go, his face calm and unreadable. That scared me more than if he had shouted. When someone that careful goes quiet, you know they're thinking. Planning. By the time we reached the elevator, my palms were slick. He saw us, I whispered. He knows they're taking me upstairs. Good, Karen said. Let him get used to not controlling everything. The doors closed. For the first time in years, there was a literal, physical barrier between us that he hadn't put there. The nurse wheeled me into a small, plain room on the observation floor. Bed. Chair. TV on the wall. A window looking out over the parking lot. Here we are, she said. We'll be taking your vitals regularly. If you need anything, use the call button. When she left, Karen pulled a chair up to the bed. This is where it gets hard, she said. The quiet time. Your brain will try to tell you you're making a big deal out of nothing. That you should go back downstairs, apologize, tell him you overreacted. That's what years of conditioning do. She wasn't wrong. Even as she spoke, I could hear the familiar voice in my head. You're overreacting. You're dramatic. He loves you. He cooks for you. He's worried about you. Maybe you are crazy. Maybe the doctor is wrong. Maybe. I need you to remember one thing when that voice gets loud, she said. Your blood does not lie. The story in that vial is not an opinion. It's not an argument you can lose. It's data. Someone put something in you without your consent. That's the only fact you need today. I nodded. What if he comes up here? I asked. What if he insists on staying? He can visit, she said. He can't move you. If at any point you feel unsafe with him in this room, you can press the call button and ask for a nurse. If he gets aggressive, they'll ask him to leave. If he refuses, they call security. Remember, in this building, he doesn't make the rules. That idea felt so foreign I almost laughed. You'll come back? I asked. After you talk to whoever you have to talk to? Yes, she said. We'll start paperwork for a safe place. We'll also flag your name in the system. If you ever come back here and he tries to speak for you, the note will be there. Her eyes darkened for a second. You're not the first woman he's almost gotten away with this with. Maybe the first he used drugs on, but not the first he tried to rewrite. What does that mean? I asked. It means, she said, standing up, that when we look deeper into your records, this might not be the first time he's tried to have a medical professional label you as unstable. I'll be back. When she left, the room felt very quiet. Too quiet. I lay back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to curl up and sleep for a week. Another part was wide awake for the first time in months. Every time my phone buzzed on the tray beside me, my stomach clenched. 3 missed calls from Daniel. Then a text. They're keeping you? Overreaction. Call me. Another. I'm in the lobby. Let me come up. Another. You're scaring me. Answer the phone. The old me would have answered. The me lying in this bed let it buzz. After a while, he stopped calling. That scared me too. Then my phone lit up with a different name. My sister. We used to talk every Sunday. Lately it had been every other month, if that. I stared at her name for a long moment, and then answered. Hello. My voice cracked on the second syllable. Hey, she said, her voice warm and familiar. I know we weren't scheduled for our usual call, but I had the weirdest feeling I should check in. You okay? That was all it took. All the words I'd been swallowing for a year came rushing up. I'm in the hospital, I blurted. They're keeping me overnight. It's complicated. What? She said, instantly sharp. What happened? Are you hurt? No, I'm on a monitor, I said. My blood tests, they found things. Drugs. Stuff I didn't know I was taking. There was a long silence. What do you mean you didn't know? She asked slowly. Like they made a mistake? No, I said. Like someone's been putting them in my drinks. Saying it out loud to someone who knew me before him felt like dropping a concrete block. The line went quiet again. Then, is he there? She asked. She didn't say his name. She didn't have to. He's in the lobby, I said. He doesn't know everything yet. Do the doctors think? She trailed off like she was afraid to finish that sentence. They think it's suspicious, I said. They've got a social worker with me. They don't want me going home with him. A small sound came through the phone. Half sigh, half something else. I knew something was off, she said finally. You stopped calling. Every time I asked to visit you, he said it was bad timing. He told me you were fragile, and stress wasn't good for you. I started to feel like I needed his permission to talk to my own sister. I closed my eyes. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because you sounded happy. Or at least tired but loyal. I didn't want to be the bitter unmarried person tearing down your marriage. She exhaled again. Listen to your doctors, she said. If they say don't go home with him, don't. You can come here. We'll make it work. The sofa pulls out. The kids will be thrilled to have you. We'll add another toothbrush to the cup. The idea of suddenly moving into my sister's chaotic, kid-filled house felt overwhelming. But also safe. Let me see what they arrange, I said. There are legal things, I think. Money. The apartment. I can't just disappear. You can for a little while, she said. You're not disappearing. You're surviving. A nurse came in then to take my blood pressure. I mouthed 1 minute and held up a finger. I have to go, I told my sister. They're poking me again. I'll call you when I know more. Do that, she said. And for God's sake, don't drink anything he brings you. It was meant as a dark joke, but it landed like an instruction. The nurse wrapped the cuff around my arm. You look pale, she said gently. You want some water? From the tap, I said quickly. And, could you bring it yourself? Of course, she replied, not even blinking. When she left, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a different number. Unknown. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text. This is Dr. Patel from your primary care office. I know you've already spoken to the hospital doctor, but I'd like your permission to release your older notes to the team. There are some things in your chart I'd like to review with them. Older notes. Things I'd never paid attention to because every visit felt like a blur of blood pressure readings, and you should exercise more. I texted back one word. Yes. 10 minutes later, Karen returned, holding a thin folder. Her face was tighter now. Less neutral. We got your records from the last year, she said. From your regular doctor. There are some things you need to see. My throat went dry. What kind of things? She sat down and opened the folder. Do you remember coming in 6 months ago after you fell down the stairs? She asked. Vaguely, I did. I'd slipped while carrying laundry. Landed hard. Bruised my ribs. At least, that's what I remembered. Sort of, I said. I remember being sore for days. He said I was clumsy. Your chart says you told the nurse you weren't sure what happened, she said, reading. 1 minute I was on my feet, The next I was at the bottom of the stairs. Your husband told the doctor you'd been under a lot of stress and not sleeping well, and he was worried you might be distracted or dissociating. He suggested you might need a psychiatric evaluation then, too. She turned a page. 3 months before that, there's an ER visit noted. You came in with a bad cut on your arm. The note says you bumped into a cabinet door, and the story is mostly from him. He told staff you'd been acting confused all week, and he was afraid you might hurt yourself by accident. My stomach churned. I cut myself cooking, I said. Chopping onions. I didn't bump into a cabinet. The record doesn't reflect that, she said. Most of the narrative is his. It's written in third person, but the structure sounds like someone else talking about you, not you talking about yourself. She closed the folder. This is what he's building, she said. A paper trail. A story in the medical system that says you're unstable, forgetful, unsafe. So that if you ever accuse him of anything, there's already doubt on your side. I felt like I might throw up. You mean if I told someone he was hurting me, they'd look at this and say, well, she's the crazy one. Exactly, she said. That's why finding those drugs in your blood now is so important. It changes the storyline. If he's been putting things in you that cause confusion, dizziness, memory problems, it undercuts his entire narrative. I stared at the closed folder, imagining all the words inside. All the moments of my life retold in his voice. Why would he do all this? I asked. Just to win arguments? To make himself look good? Karen hesitated. There might be other motives, she said. The financial counselor working with us pulled some of your insurance information. Did you know your husband increased your life insurance policy last year? The room seemed to tilt. Increased? I repeated. We don't even. I thought I just had the small one from work. You did, she said. Twice your yearly salary. But last year, a separate policy was opened in your name with a private company. The benefit is substantial. And he is listed as the sole beneficiary. I felt my chest tighten. I never signed anything, I said. I would remember that. The signature on the copy we saw doesn't quite match your usual one on file, she replied carefully. There are ways to contest that later. For now, what matters is that 6 months ago, he took out a policy that would pay him a large sum if around the same time he began telling doctors you were unstable. She let that sink in. My mind flashed back to the time he'd insisted on handling the mail. So it doesn't stress you out, babe. Bills are boring. The time a courier had shown up, and he'd met them at the door before I could answer, then come back with a folder and said, just some refinance stuff, I took care of it. The time he'd joked, hey, if you die, at least I'll finally be able to retire, and I'd smacked his arm and said, don't say that, and he'd laughed it off. It was like realizing the love story you'd been living in was actually a crime novel, and you weren't the main character. You were the mark. You're telling me, I said slowly, that the man I married, the man who cooks me dinner and tucks me into bed, has been drugging me, telling doctors I'm crazy, and setting things up so if I die, he gets a payday? I'm telling you we see that pattern a lot more than you think, she said quietly. We can't say guilty yet. That's for investigators and courts. But we can say this is very, very suspicious and act accordingly. A cold, clear anger rose in my chest. It cut through the fog like bleach through mold. What happens now? I asked. Now, she said, we document everything. The drugs. The inconsistencies. The insurance. We make a report to the appropriate authorities. We help you secure your own accounts. We line up a lawyer who understands this kind of case. And we make a safety plan for when he realizes he's losing control. He's in the lobby, I said. What if he's already realized it? She nodded. He might have, she said. Which is why we're moving quickly. The doctor has informed him you're being admitted overnight. For now, that buys us a little time. But when he goes home alone tonight and sees an empty house, he's going to start making calls. We want you somewhere safe before he connects all the dots. Safe like where? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A bed in a secure apartment owned by a partner organization, she said. Non-disclosed address. Staff on call. Other women who've crawled out of similar messes. It's not the Ritz, but it's not a cot in a gym either. While you're there, we work on the rest. I stared at the ceiling. This morning, I said slowly, I was worried about my cholesterol. I was going to ask if I should eat more oatmeal. Tonight I'm an almost murder victim. Tonight, Karen corrected gently. You are a survivor who got a warning in time. Many don't. That was the first moment I really let myself picture the other path. The one where the doctor glanced at my labs, saw something a little off, shrugged, and clicked normal. The one where I drove home with him, drank the tea he made me, and maybe never woke up. It made my skin crawl. Okay, I said, for what felt like the 100th time that day. Okay, let's do it. Somewhere deep inside me, a switch flipped. I wasn't just going to escape. I was going to make sure he couldn't do this to anyone else. I just didn't know yet how messy that would get. Okay, let's do it. Somewhere deep inside me, a switch flipped. I wasn't just going to escape. I was going to make sure he couldn't do this to anyone else. I just didn't know yet how messy that would get. Karen nodded. I'm going to step out and start the process, she said. You'll see a lot of people in and out for a bit. Try not to let it overwhelm you. Every signature, every question, is a brick in a wall between you and him. When she left, another nurse came in with a stack of forms on a clipboard. I know this is a lot, the nurse said, but we need your consent for admission and some basic history. Basic history. It sounded so harmless. She handed me a pen. My hand shook, but I signed. My name looked different than it did on the imaginary papers he'd forged. This one was mine. While we went through allergies and old surgeries and emergency contacts, I kept thinking. He thought he was the only one who knew how to use paperwork as a weapon. He was wrong. After the nurse left, there was a knock on the door. Not the soft tap of a nurse. A firmer, deliberate knock. Come in, I said, my throat tight. The door opened. Daniel stepped in. He'd taken off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves. He looked like a worried husband from a TV commercial about heart medication. Hey, he said softly. They told me they were keeping you. I had to sign some things downstairs. Yeah, I said. They want to run more tests. He walked to the side of the bed and sat down in the chair where Karen had been. You should have let me come up sooner, he said. You know, I hate being left out of what's happening with you. I'm your husband. I'm supposed to be here. It was the kind of thing that used to make me feel cherished. Now it sounded like a threat wrapped in romance. The doctor said it was routine, I replied. Just observation. His eyes searched my face. He was trying to read me. You seem off, he said slowly. Are you mad at me for something? There it was. The reflexive jump to you're upset, you must be irrational. I took a breath. I heard Karen's voice in my head. You don't have to tell him everything. Not yet. I'm scared, I said honestly. They found things in my blood. I don't understand them yet. I'm tired. I just need a night to figure out what's going on. What things? He asked quickly. Too quickly. They didn't say, I lied. They just said some numbers were weird. He laughed, but it sounded wrong. These doctors, he said. They always want to keep you, run every test under the sun. Insurance scams, half of it. He reached for my hand, but I pulled it slightly away, pretending to adjust the blanket. It was a tiny movement, but he noticed. His eyes narrowed for half a second before he smoothed his face again. You know I'm on your side, right? He asked. Always. I'm the only one who really knows what you've been like lately. These people, they just see you for 5 minutes and think they understand. That was when I realized something important. He wasn't scared I was sick. He was scared I was waking up. And he could sense it. They want to keep me tonight, I repeated. I think that's for the best. He nodded slowly, like a parent humoring a child. All right, he said. If that's what you want, I'll go home and get your things. Your charger. Your robe. The good blanket. Do you want me to bring you anything else? My stomach clenched. Images flashed in my mind. A thermos of soup. A travel mug of tea. A smoothie in a metal flask. No, I said. They'll probably have food here. And water. I don't want to carry too much. Hospital food is terrible, he said lightly. At least let me bring you some tea. It always calms you down. No tea, I said, sharper than I meant to. His eyes went flat for a second. You love my tea, he said. You beg me for it when you can't sleep. Not tonight, I replied. I feel like my body needs a break from everything. We stared at each other. It felt like a test. You're being a little dramatic, he said, eventually chuckling. But fine. No tea. I'll bring your book instead. You don't have to come back tonight, I said suddenly. It's late. You should rest. I'll be surrounded by nurses. I'll call you in the morning. His smile froze. You don't want me here, he asked. There was a tiny crack in his voice, the beginning of wounded husband mode. It's not that, I said quickly. I need to sleep. Really sleep. And every time you're around, I try to take care of you too. I need one night where I'm the only one I'm worrying about. That part, at least, was pure truth. He leaned back in the chair and studied me. You sound different, he said softly. Since when do you talk like that? Since today, I said. since my blood started saying things I wasn't ready to hear. For a heartbeat, the mask dropped. His eyes went cold. Calculating. I saw the man who spoke to doctors about me like I was a broken appliance. The man who forged signatures. The man who clicked increase coverage on an insurance form. Then he blinked, and the mask slid back on. "You're tired," he said. "Everything feels bigger when you're tired. Get some sleep, okay? We'll laugh about this in a few weeks when it turns out to be low potassium or something stupid." He stood up. "I'll check in tomorrow," he said. "Love you." He leaned down and kissed my forehead. I let him. The moment his lips touched my skin, my body screamed at me. Every nerve said, "This is not safe." I forced myself not to shrink back. I needed him to walk out of there thinking he still had control. "Love you too," I said. The words felt like ash in my mouth. He walked to the door. His hand hovered over the handle. Then he turned back. "Oh," he said lightly, "one last thing. When the doctors ask you questions, maybe don't embellish. You have a way of making small things sound big when you're upset. Just stick to the facts." Okay. The irony of him telling me to stick to the facts when he'd been rewriting my life for a year would have been funny if it weren't so sick. "I'll tell them exactly what I remember," I said. "That's all." He watched me for a second longer, then left. The door shut behind him. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Karen slipped in just a minute later, as if she'd been waiting outside, listening for his footsteps. "How did that feel?" she asked. "Like walking across a frozen lake," I said. Every word felt like it could crack the ice. "You did well," she said. "You kept him calm. For now, that's what we want. When he feels blindsided, that's when he's most dangerous." "He offered to bring me tea," I said. "Of course he did." Her mouth tightened. "He's not stupid. He knows tea is his delivery system. He knows something is off," I added. "He said I sound different. He's not wrong." "That's okay," she replied. "He doesn't have to like the new version of you. He just doesn't get a vote." She sat down again. "We've got you a bed," she said. "It's not far from here, but it's not in your neighborhood either. We'll transfer you there as a discharge to a safe program early tomorrow. Tonight, you're an overnight patient. No visitors after 9 without staff approval." "Will he try?" I asked. "Probably," she said. "He may call. He may come to the desk and demand to see you. The nurses are briefed. They'll tell him visiting hours are over. If he causes trouble, security will escort him out. You keep your phone on silent and don't answer unless it's us or your sister." My sister. I'd almost forgotten, in the rush of information. "I told her I'd call back," I said. "She said I can come there if I need to." "That's good," Karen said. "We can loop her in tomorrow, once you're safe. It helps to have someone on the outside who believes you." "Do you think anyone else will?" I asked. "My friends. My boss. The neighbors. They all think he's—" I trailed off, not able to say perfect without gagging. "Some will," she said. "Some won't. Some will say, 'I always knew something was off.' Some will say, 'I never saw it coming.' None of their reactions change what happened, or what you need to do next." I nodded. For the first time since I walked into that office, exhaustion hit me like a wave. "Can I sleep now?" I asked. "Please." "Yes," she said. "Try. We'll keep watch." That night, sleep came in jagged pieces. Every time I drifted off, I saw him standing over me with a mug, or heard the doctor saying, "Do not go home with your husband today." Once I jerked awake, convinced I'd hear his voice in the hallway. Instead, I heard the squeak of a cart and a nurse humming under her breath. There were no footsteps outside my door. No keys in the lock. For the first time in a long time, the quiet around me wasn't his. Morning came with the sound of a blood pressure cuff inflating around my arm. "Your numbers are a little better today," the nurse said. "Rest is helping." It wasn't just rest. It was the absence of a chemical I'd never agreed to take. When she left, Karen returned with a different woman in a blazer carrying a laptop bag. "This is Lisa," Karen said. "She's a legal advocate. She helps women understand their options when there's possible criminal activity involved." Criminal. The word made my stomach turn. "I don't know if," I started, but Lisa held up a hand. "You don't have to decide anything today," she said. "I just want to explain what might happen next so it doesn't blindside you." She opened her laptop. "The hospital has a duty to report certain things," she said. "One of them is suspected poisoning. Another is possible domestic abuse. Between the drugs in your system and the pattern in your old records, your doctor has already made a report. It will go to Adult Protective Services and to a special unit at the police department. A detective will likely want to talk to you. My instinct was to panic. Police. Court. Trials. My private life on display. What if I don't want that? I asked. What if I just want to leave? You can tell them you don't want to press charges, she said. But understand they may still investigate. If they believe a crime has been committed, it's not just about you. It's about preventing this from happening to someone else. I thought of another woman. Somewhere out there. Maybe 5 years from now. Sitting on another exam table, hearing another doctor say, "You have drugs in your system you didn't consent to." I thought of her face. Her future. Let them investigate, I said quietly. If he did this to me, I'm not the first woman he's done it to. I don't want to be the last. Lisa nodded. That's brave, she said. And smart. It also means we need to get ahead of his side of the story. She clicked a few keys. He has already called your primary care office this morning, she said. He left a message saying he's very concerned about you and asking how he can support your treatment plan. He mentioned again that he thinks you might be having a breakdown. Of course he did, I muttered. Doesn't he ever get tired of his own script? Men like him rarely do, she said. They just get more creative with the details. She looked up at me. Here's something that might work in your favor. There was another woman before you. His ex-wife. I asked. I thought they just grew apart. Not her, Lisa said. At least not the one in his official story. I mean before that. A fiancé. 10 years ago. The detective pulled up a file from another city. A chill rolled down my spine. What kind of file? I asked. An accident report, she said. She died in a fall down a staircase in a rental house. There were no charges. But there are similarities. She was on new meds. She'd been described by him as unstable to friends and family. And she had a small life insurance policy with him as the beneficiary. My mouth went dry. Are you saying he might have? I couldn't finish. We can't say that yet, she replied. But we can say he has a pattern of being very nearby when women he's with become confused, clumsy, and tragically unlucky. My heart pounded. I thought of the night I'd fallen down the stairs. The way he'd told the story later. She's always tripping over her own feet, he'd said, laughing, while I sat quietly with bruised ribs and a foggy head. The way everyone had smiled and shaken their heads. Oh, you, they'd said to me. You're such a klutz. Why didn't anyone see it before? I asked. With her. With me. With who knows who else. Because he looks like the kind of man people want to like, Lisa said simply. He says the right things. He knows how to cry at the right moments. He knows what parts of the story to tell, and what to leave out. But now he has a problem. What problem? I asked. You didn't die, she said. You got to the doctor in time. Your blood told on him. And for once, the people in white coats believed you. She closed the laptop. You'll be discharged this afternoon, she said. Not home. To the safe apartment. The detective may stop by there to talk. In the meantime, we're putting a temporary block on any changes to your financial accounts. The bank has been notified to flag any large movements or attempts to access things in your name without you. My head spun. Can they do that? I asked. Once there's a report of possible financial abuse and fraud, yes, she said. They can at least slow things down. Time is your friend here. Time. A week ago, time had been something I filled with chores and TV shows and his routines. Now it was a shield. What about my job? I asked suddenly. My boss. They'll wonder why I just disappeared. We can provide a medical note, Lisa said. Nothing detailed. Just that you were hospitalized and need a leave of absence. When you're ready, you can decide how much to tell them. A knock at the door cut through my thoughts. Another nurse. We've got your discharge papers ready for later today, she said. Once we get final lab results, the doctor will sign off and you can be transported. Transported, I echoed. Like cargo. Like someone worth moving carefully, Karen said. A few hours later, after more blood draws and a bland hospital lunch, Karen came back with a small duffel bag. Where did that come from? I asked. From him, she said. We had security go through it before it came up here. Clothes. Your charger. A book. No food. No drinks. They checked. I asked. Yes, she said. We told him hospital rules don't allow outside food for patients on observation. He didn't like it, but he complied. I unzipped the bag and saw my robe, my sweatpants, my slippers. My favorite paperback. It all looked so normal. I wondered if he'd stood in our bedroom folding these, thinking about whether I'd live long enough to wear them again. The thought made my skin crawl. At 3 in the afternoon, a different kind of nurse came in. She wore a jacket instead of scrubs and carried a clipboard with transfer forms. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. Karen walked beside the wheelchair again as we moved through back corridors I'd never noticed as a visitor. Service elevators. Staff-only doors. Someone had planned my exit like a small military operation. When we finally came out into a side parking lot, there was a plain sedan waiting, not an ambulance. "Our driver will take you," Karen said. "I'll follow in my car and meet you there. No one but staff knows this address. Not even him." I looked back at the hospital building. Somewhere inside, he might still be pacing a lobby, charm turned up to 11, spinning his version of events to whoever would listen. For once, it didn't matter. I was leaving without his permission. As the car pulled away, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. I watched the city roll by. Streets I recognized blurred into ones I didn't. 10 minutes later, we turned into a quiet complex. Nothing special. 2-story buildings. Small balconies. A playground in the center. It looked like any other apartment community. That was the point. Inside, the unit they took me to was simple but clean. A couch. A small kitchen. 2 bedrooms. One already had someone's stuff in it. The other was empty except for a bed with fresh sheets. "You'll share the unit with one other woman," Karen said. "She works nights and keeps to herself. You'll have your own room and lock." "This looks normal," I said. "It is," she replied. "That's how safety often looks. Not dramatic. Just normal." She handed me a set of keys. "One for the front door. One for your room. One for the mailbox if you end up staying long enough to get mail here." I turned the keys in my hand. They felt heavier than they looked. "He doesn't know where this is?" I asked. "No," she said. "And he won't. He may try to call you. To guilt you. To bait you. We'll talk about how to handle that. For now, you're here. You're breathing. You're not drinking anything he hands you. That's a good day." I laughed once, a dry, humorless sound. "You make the bar sound low," I said. "Survival bars are allowed to be low," she replied. When she left, closing the door behind her, I stood in the middle of the small living room and listened. No footsteps in the hall I recognized. No familiar jingle of his keys. No TV blasting from another room. Just the faint hum of a fridge and the distant sound of kids playing outside. I went to the bedroom and set my bag down. For a long moment I just stared at the bed. Then I lay down on it, fully dressed, shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling. It hit me then with full force. I was in hiding. From my own husband. Not because he'd shouted. Not because he'd hit me. Because he'd smiled, brought me tea, and quietly tried to erase me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost didn't look. Then I did. A new text from an unknown number. "This is Detective Harris with the Special Investigations Unit. I'd like to talk to you about your recent hospital visit and some related matters. You are not in trouble. When you feel ready, please call or text back." I stared at the message. This was the next door I'd have to walk through. I didn't know what was waiting on the other side. I just knew one thing. I was done letting him write my story. I stared at the message from the detective until the words blurred. "You are not in trouble." I read that line 3 times. I didn't feel like I wasn't in trouble. I felt like my entire life was on fire. I put the phone down without replying. I wasn't ready to talk to a stranger about this. Not yet. I called my sister instead. She picked up on the first ring. "Well," she said. "Are you still at the hospital? What's happening?" "I'm out," I said. "Sort of. They moved me to a safe place." I looked around the plain little bedroom. It's like an apartment. For women in my situation. I still hated that phrase. "Is he there?" she asked. "Anywhere near you?" "No," I said. "He has no idea where I am." Saying it out loud eased something in my chest. "Good," she said. "Stay that way. I told the kids you were on a work trip so they wouldn't worry, but they're already making up wild stories. You know how they are." Her voice was light for me, but underneath I could hear the fury she was holding back. "A detective texted," I added. "They want to talk about everything." "You should talk to them," she said immediately. "I know cops aren't perfect, but if they're paying attention before something awful happens, take the help. Don't let him spin this first." She was right. If I didn't tell my version, he'd tell his. And he'd been practicing his for months. "Okay," I said. "I'll call him." "Do you want me on the line when you do?" she asked. 3-way call, moral support? The idea of hearing her breathing quietly on the other end while I told a stranger how my husband had been slowly erasing me made me feel less alone. "Yes," I said. "Stay on." We hung up. I took a breath, then tapped the detective's number and hit call. He picked up on the second ring. "This is Detective Harris," he said. His voice was low, steady. Not overly warm, not cold. "Business." "This is..." I hesitated. My identity had never felt so fragile. "This is Laura Carter," I said finally. "From the hospital." "Thank you for calling," he said. "I know this is not an easy time. Before we go further, I want you to know this call is being recorded, with your consent. Is that okay?" "Yes," I said. "That's okay." "Good," he replied. "Your doctor filed a mandatory report. I've reviewed your lab results, some of your older records, and some recent financial flags. I have some questions. You are not a suspect. You are a potential victim and a crucial witness. If at any point you want to stop, tell me. We can continue later." The word victim made my skin crawl. "I'll answer," I said. "I don't want him doing this to anyone else." "That's the right attitude," he said. "Let's start with the basics. How long have you been married?" 3 years, I said. "Together for 5. Did you know about the private life insurance policy he took out on you last year?" he asked. "No," I said. "I thought all I had was the small work policy. I never signed for anything else." "Did you give him permission to sign on your behalf?" "Never," I said. "I didn't even know that was a thing." "Did you know he called your doctor before your last few appointments?" "I didn't," I said. "I only found out yesterday." "Did he ever give you pills or drinks and tell you they were something harmless? Vitamins, herbal remedies, sleep aids?" "He brought me tea almost every night," I said. "He told me it was chamomile or relaxing herbs. Sometimes he brought me water and said, 'I crushed your melatonin in, it works faster this way.' Saying that out loud made me want to slap my past self. How had that sounded okay? "Did you ever see him handle your prescription bottles?" "Yes," I said. "He organized my pillbox. He said I mixed things up. He took over refilling them. He said the pharmacy lines stressed me out." "Do you have any history before him of psychiatric diagnosis or being on mood drugs or sedatives?" he asked. "No," I said. "I had normal stress. A divorce. Work. But I've never been on anything like what they found in my blood." I heard typing on his end. "Okay," he said. "Now I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to stay as calm as you can. I know that's a big ask." "Just say it," I replied. My voice surprised me. It sounded stronger than I felt. "Your husband came into the station this morning," he said. My stomach dropped. "Why?" I asked. "He filed a missing person report," the detective said. "On you." I almost laughed. It came out as a short, sharp sound. "He knows exactly where I am," I said. "He saw me admitted. He packed my bag." "According to him," the detective continued, "the hospital abruptly discharged you without telling him where you went. He said he's terrified because you've been talking nonsense and blaming him for things that aren't real. He described you as paranoid, unstable, and possibly suicidal. He said he's afraid you might hurt yourself or run away into danger." I closed my eyes. "Of course he did," I whispered. "That's his favorite story." "He also brought in copies of older medical records," the detective added. "He highlighted parts where you mentioned being dizzy, confused, or stressed. He suggested you might have early dementia. He cried in the lobby. Staff said he was very convincing. I pictured him there. Red eyes. Tissue clutched in his hand. Voice shaking just enough to seem vulnerable. Did they believe him? I asked. "Some of them," the detective said. "But I've seen enough men cry in these halls to know tears don't always mean what people think they do." There was a pause. "Here's the thing," he went on. "If the doctor hadn't sent us your tox screen first, his version would have gone into the system clean. Worried husband, unstable wife. That would have framed everything. But we got your blood before we got his story. That changes a lot." I gripped the phone tighter. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "I need to build a timeline. When your symptoms started. When your policy was opened. When he first started telling doctors you were unstable. We're already pulling his financials with a warrant. We're talking to his ex-wife. And," he hesitated, "we've reopened an old case file in another county." "The fiancé?" I asked quietly. 10 years ago?" "Yes," he said. "I can't share all the details yet. But there are echoes." He let that word sit. "We will also need to talk to you in person," he continued. "In a secure location. Either there, or at the station with an escort. I'd recommend there for now as long as you feel safe." "I do," I said. "Safer than I've felt in a long time." "Good," he said. "I'll coordinate with your social worker. For now, do not contact him yourself. Do not respond to any of his messages. Let him talk into the void." The less you say, the fewer words he has to twist. What if he finds me? I asked. He's clever, charming, persistent. Then you call 911, the detective said simply. And tell them there is an active investigation involving your husband and suspected poisoning. They will see the flag on your address. You are not alone in this anymore, Ms. Carter. He's not the only one telling stories. When we hung up, I lay there and stared at the wall. He had already tried to make me a ghost while I was still alive. He'd filed a missing person report on a woman resting in a bed his own actions had put her in. The audacity made me almost dizzy. My sister's voice came through on the other line. I'd forgotten I'd left her on three-way. You still there? She asked. Yeah, I said. You heard all that? Most of it, she replied. If I ever see that man again, I swear. You won't, I cut in. Not if I can help it. The next few days blurred into a strange, suspended time. I met my roommate, a quiet woman in her 30s who worked nights and said very little. We shared a kitchen but not much else. There was comfort in her silence. It said, you don't have to perform here. Karen visited, bringing forms and coffee and small pieces of normal conversation. We filled out emergency banking paperwork to freeze joint accounts from large transfers without my sign-off. We changed my email passwords and set up two-factor authentication on my phone. Every step felt like tugging another thread out of a net he'd wrapped around me. The detective came by on a gray afternoon. He wasn't alone. A woman in plain clothes stepped in behind him and flashed a small badge. This is Anna, he said. She's from the district attorney's office. We're working together on your case. My case. It still sounded surreal. We sat at the little kitchen table. I clutched a mug of tea that I'd made myself from a sealed tea bag and water I'd watched boil. Detective Harris laid out several photos. Do you recognize this man? He asked, even though we all knew the answer. It was Daniel, smiling at a company barbecue, standing next to me at our wedding, sitting on a couch with his arm around me. I nodded. That's him, I said. He put those aside and laid out a different photo. A woman in her late 20s. Dark hair. Warm eyes. Do you know her? He asked. No, I said. Who is she? Her name was Rachel, he replied. She was engaged to your husband 12 years ago. She died after falling down the stairs in a rental house they shared. He said she'd been drinking. There were no charges. Was she on any medications? I asked, my voice barely audible. According to her talk screen, he said, she had a combination of prescription sedatives and mood drugs in her system. The room swayed. Just like me, I whispered. Just like you, he confirmed. Back then, nobody connected the dots. Different county. Different doctors. He played the grieving fiancé very well. People felt sorry for him. Is there anyone? I asked. Whoever doesn't feel sorry for him. His mother, Anna said quietly. I looked up. His mother? We spoke to her, the detective said. She was conflicted. On the surface, she defended him. He's a good boy, he'd never hurt anyone. You know the script. But when we pressed, when we showed her the patterns, when we mentioned your lab results, something shifted. She called us back later that night, Anna added. Said there were things she should have told someone a long time ago. She requested to give a statement. The idea of his mother turning on him rattled me. She'd always been so warm to my face. Brought me casseroles when I was sick. Knitted us a blanket for our anniversary. What did she say? I asked. Some of it we can't share yet, the detective said. But I can tell you this. She knew more about Rachel's last weeks than she admitted originally. She knew Rachel had started saying she felt strange after drinking things he gave her. She knew he'd joked about cashing out of his problems one day. She said she'd brushed it off as dark humor. Now she's not so sure. I felt a strange, sick pity for her. To realize your son might be a monster, and know you'd helped him look like a saint. Are you going to arrest him? I asked. We're getting close, Anna said. We need a few more pieces. Your full tox panel. Pharmacy records. Bank records. His search history. But yes, that's where this is headed. What about me? I asked. What do I have to do? For now, the detective said. You keep breathing. You don't contact him. You document any messages he sends but don't reply. When we're ready, we may ask you to record a phone call with him. Get him talking. Gently challenge his version of events. Sometimes these men can't resist explaining themselves. They think they're so clever no one will ever catch them. The idea of calling him made my chest seize up. He's good on the phone, I said. He twists things. Makes jokes. Makes you feel silly for even asking. We'll coach you, Anna said. You won't be alone on the line. We can feed you questions. You just have to be yourself. I don't even know who that is anymore, I muttered. You'll remember, she said. He hasn't erased you. He's just been scribbling over the surface. After they left, Karen sat with me a while longer. You're doing well, she said. You might not feel like it, but you are. I haven't done anything, I replied. You all are doing it. The doctor. The detective. You. I'm just sitting here. You did the hardest part, she said. You believed yourself. Once. At the right moment. That night, I scrolled through my old text messages with Daniel. The heart emojis. The did you get home safe? The don't forget your scarf, it's cold. It was like reading a script from a play I'd been in without knowing it. Near the top of the thread, a new message blinked in. I don't know why you're doing this, he wrote. The police came to talk to me. You told them I drugged you? After everything I've done to help you? You're sick, Laura. You need help. I've been trying to get you that help. Stop listening to strangers who don't know us. Another message. If you loved me, you wouldn't do this. You're throwing away our life. Our home. For what? Some drama with a social worker. Another. Do you really think you can survive without me? You can't even remember what day it is half the time. I set the phone down. Karen had warned me this would happen. The guilt. The gaslighting. The flip from I'm worried to you're ungrateful. I turned the phone over so I couldn't see the screen and went to make myself a cup of tea. Ordinary tea. From a sealed box. I boiled the water. I watched it pour. I watched the color spread. For the first time in almost a year, I drank something hot without wondering what was in it. I cried into that mug like it was some kind of holy object. The next week was a strange calm before a different kind of storm. Paperwork. Calls with lawyers. Brief, careful walks outside during daylight. I wore a baseball cap and big sunglasses, feeling ridiculous and paranoid. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed with a call from a number labeled unknown restricted. I almost let it go. Then I remembered what the detective had said about a recorded call. I answered and put it on speaker, my finger hovering over the end button. Hello, Laura. His voice. So familiar it made my skin prickle. Where are you? Somewhere safe, I said. You can't just disappear like this, he said, a note of anger under the smooth surface. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me? To us. I have some idea what you were doing to me, I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. There was a pause. They've gotten to you, he said carefully. Those people. They fill your head with worst-case scenarios. They twist everything I've done for you and make it look sinister. Did you put drugs in my drinks? I asked, cutting straight through. Silence. Then a laugh. Is that what they told you? He said. That's ridiculous. I gave you exactly what you asked for. You begged me for help sleeping. You cried about your mood swings. I talked to the doctor and got you what you needed. That's not poison. That's love. I never agreed to be on those medications, I said. No one explained them to me. No one said I'd be so out of it I wouldn't remember cutting my own arm. Memory is a funny thing, he replied. Especially when you're under stress. You've always been dramatic. You magnify everything. Did you forge my signature on an insurance policy? I asked. This time the pause was longer. You're tired, he said finally. We shouldn't talk about serious things when you're like this. He was dodging. Answer the question, I said. Did you sign my name on that policy? I handled paperwork for both of us, he said. You hate forms. You always said you'd rather I did it. I was just taking care of things. Taking care of things for if I died, I said. You stood there in our kitchen and joked that if I died you'd finally be able to retire. How long have you been planning that? Don't you dare put that on me, he snapped, the mask slipping. You're the one who's been falling, forgetting, acting crazy. I've been the one picking up the pieces. If anyone deserves something back, it's me. Deserves what? I asked quietly. Money. There it was. Out loud. I can't talk to you when you're like this, he said. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. I will never be the version of reasonable that lets you drug me, I replied. We're done, Daniel. And so is this call. I hung up before he could answer. My hand shook as I set the phone down. A second later, it buzzed again. A text from Detective Harris. We got that, it said. Very useful. Relief flooded me so fast I felt lightheaded. They'd been recording. I hadn't done it alone. The day they arrested him was oddly quiet. No sirens. No dramatic chase. Just a knock on his door, a warrant, a pair of handcuffs, and a man finally caught in his own web. I didn't see it happen. I saw it later on a grainy news clip someone sent me. Local contractor charged in suspected poisoning of wife, the headline read. His face on the screen, eyes wide, trying to play shocked and confused for the cameras. "My wife is sick," he said as they led him away. "She needs help, not this." The comments online were divided. Some people took his side. Innocent until proven guilty. Women lie. Others took mine without even knowing me. Trust the labs. If there are drugs in her blood she didn't know about, that's not an oops. That's attempted murder. I stopped reading after a while. Strangers could argue in the void. I had enough to carry. The trial didn't happen overnight. These things never do. There were months of hearings, motions, continuances. I moved in with my sister for a while, then into a small studio apartment of my own. I started seeing a therapist. I learned how to sleep without knocking myself out with someone else's secret recipe. The first time I drove past my old neighborhood, my hands shook on the wheel. I didn't turn onto our street. I wasn't ready to see the house. It took a year and a half before I saw him again in person. In the courtroom. He wore a suit. Of course he did. His hair was neatly combed. He'd lost a little weight. Jail food, maybe. Or stress. When I walked in, flanked by Karen and my lawyer, he looked at me and smiled, that same soft, familiar smile. Like we were at a dinner party, and he was greeting me across the room. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't tried to slowly erase me. I didn't smile back. I took my seat on the witness stand, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. This time, the story would not be his. It would be mine. The prosecutor asked me to describe the tea. The shakes. The nights I lost. I did. He asked how it felt to hear the doctor say, "Do not go home with your husband today." I told him. He asked if I had ever consented to being medicated. I said no. He asked if I had benefited in any way from exaggerating or lying. I said no. His lawyer tried to make me look unreliable. "You admit you were foggy," he said. "You admit you forgot things. Isn't it possible you agreed to these medications and just don't remember?" If I agreed, I said evenly, why did he tell the doctor I was paranoid and unstable without telling me? Why did he increase my life insurance quietly? Why did my symptoms improve the second I stopped drinking anything he made? The jurors listened. Some took notes. One older woman dabbed at her eyes more than once. The doctor testified next. Calm, clinical, with just enough human anger under her professionalism to make it clear she cared. She explained the lab results. The unusual combination of drugs. The risk of interactions. The duty to report. Karen spoke about patterns of control and isolation. About how someone can be imprisoned without ever seeing a cage. Detective Harris laid out the timeline like a storyboard. Policy date. Pharmacy records. Tox screens. Old ER visits. Rachel's file. The fiancé who never got to wake up in a safe apartment. The strongest moment, though, came when his mother took the stand. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Like the last year had aged her 10. She clutched a tissue, so tight her knuckles were white. "Do you love your son?" the prosecutor asked. It was a brutal question, but a necessary one. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Of course I do." "Then why are you here today?" he asked. She looked over at me. Then at the jurors. "Because loving someone doesn't mean covering up what they've done," she said. I told myself for years that he was just unlucky in love. That those women were fragile. That he tried so hard to help them. But when I saw the pattern laid out, I realized I'd been looking away. I can't look away anymore. She talked about Rachel. About the jokes he'd made. About the time she'd seen a bottle on his counter with the label peeled off. About the night after Rachel's funeral when he'd said, "At least I'm not broke," and she'd pretended not to hear. She talked about me. About how, at first, she'd thought I was good for him. How she'd noticed I seemed more tired every time she saw me. How, when she'd tried to ask, he'd stepped in and answered for me. "I'm here," she finished, "because I don't want another woman sitting in that chair. Or lying on a slab. If telling the truth hurts him, then that's a hurt he earned himself." His lawyer tried to paint her as confused, emotional, manipulated by the system. It didn't work. No one in that room missed the cost she was paying. When their side finally put him on the stand, he did exactly what everyone expected. He cried. He talked about how hard he'd tried. How difficult I'd been. How frightened he was that I might hurt myself. He said he'd only ever given me what doctors had prescribed. That I was forgetful and dramatic. That he'd exaggerated a little in my records because no one takes a woman seriously unless you make it sound really bad. "So you lied to her doctors?" the prosecutor asked. "I framed things," he corrected. "To get her help. You took out an insurance policy on her life without telling her," the prosecutor pressed. Is that how you frame love? He sputtered some excuse about responsibility and planning for the worst. It didn't land. You could feel the shift in the room. People were done giving him the benefit of the doubt. When the jury went out to deliberate, my stomach was in knots. This was the part in movies where someone pacing in a hallway is handed a verdict and bursts into tears. In real life it's slower. Messier. Quieter. We waited. An hour. 2. 3. Finally the bailiff called us back in. I sat, my hands clenched in my lap. I didn't look at him. I listened. On the charge of attempted poisoning, the foreperson said, we find the defendant guilty. The word echoed. Guilty. On the financial fraud count, guilty. On the lesser abuse and fraud charges, guilty. They couldn't charge him for Rachel. Too much time. Too much lost evidence. But her name hung in the air like a ghost. The judge sentenced him to years. Enough that, by the time he got out, if he ever did, the world would be different and his tricks would be old. People say sentencing is closure. It isn't. But it's a door. And sometimes that's enough. Walking out of that courthouse, the sky looked unnaturally bright. Reporters called out questions. Ms. Carter, do you have a statement? Do you feel safe now? Karen leaned in. You don't have to talk to them, she murmured. I didn't. Not then. My story belonged to me now. I wasn't ready to hand it over to strangers for headlines. Instead, I drove to a small park near my new apartment. I sat on a bench and watched kids play. Couples walked dogs. A woman jogging with headphones. Ordinary life. For a while I just breathed. I thought about the woman I'd been when I first met him. Tired. Hopeful. Lonely. Hungry for someone to say, let me take care of you. I thought about the woman lying in that hospital bed, hearing that someone had been putting drugs in her body without her knowledge. I thought about the woman on that stand, telling a room full of strangers about the nights she lost to someone else's plan. And I thought about the woman sitting on that bench now. Alone. Free. A little older. A lot wiser. Someone who would never again drink anything she hadn't poured herself without at least asking. What's in this? People ask me sometimes why I tell this story. Why I don't just move on. Start over. Forget. The answer is simple. Because somewhere out there, there is a woman staring at a mug in her hands, wondering why she's tired all the time. Because somewhere out there, there is a husband cracking jokes about life insurance and crazy wives to anyone who will listen. Because somewhere out there, there is a doctor looking at a lab result, about to click normal and move on. And because somewhere out there, there is a detective opening an old file on a tragic accident and feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. If my voice can tilt even one of those moments a little closer to the truth, then it's worth it. My revenge wasn't yelling at him in the courtroom. It wasn't watching him in handcuffs. Those were just scenes. My real revenge is quieter. It's the life I live now. The locks on my own doors. The name on my bank accounts. The friends I call without asking anyone's permission. The Sunday phone calls with my sister that no one screens. The cup of tea I make for myself every night from a box I paid for, with water I watched boil. I drink it slowly. I taste every sip. And when I set the mug down, I know one thing with absolute certainty. Every thought in my head, every feeling in my body, every memory I carry is mine. Not his. Never again his. And that is the kind of ending no policy in the world can cash in on. People think once the court case is over, life snaps back into place. It doesn't. It settles. Slowly. Awkwardly. Like a bone that's been broken and set right, still aching when the weather changes. Months after the trial, I would still wake up some nights certain I tasted that old bitterness on my tongue. For a second, half asleep, I'd panic, wondering what he'd slipped me this time. Then I'd remember. I'd reach over to the nightstand, feel the cool glass of plain water I'd poured myself, and force my breathing to slow. You're safe. You're here. He's there. The distance between here and there became the most precious thing I owned. I went back to work before I went back to myself. My boss had been kind. Take the time you need, he'd said. We'll cover your accounts. When I walked into the office that first Monday, people looked at me differently. Some with sympathy. Some with awkwardness. A few with that rubberneck curiosity people get around a car crash. I ignored all of it. I sat at my desk. I opened my computer. The spreadsheets looked the same. Numbers are numbers. They don't care whose name is on the paycheck. At lunch, one of my coworkers, Jenna, hovered by my door. We'd been friendly before. Not close, but friendly. Hey, she said. I didn't know if I should say anything. I heard a little. Are you okay? It was the simplest question in the world and the hardest to answer. I'm alive, I said. I'm working. That's a start. She stepped in and closed the door halfway. I just wanted you to know, she said, that if you ever want to get out of the house after work and not be alone with your thoughts, I'm around. We can sit in a diner and eat fries in silence. No pressure. That offer, no pressure, no demand for a dramatic confession, was exactly what I needed. Thanks, I said. I might take you up on that. A week later, I did. We sat in a booth under humming fluorescent lights, dunking fries in ketchup, talking about nothing serious. Work. TV shows. Her dog. It felt like putting weight back on a leg I hadn't trusted in a long time. My sister called every Sunday again. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes for 10 minutes. How's your brain today? She'd ask, half joking. Less foggy, I'd say. More mine. One Sunday, she said very carefully. So, do you think you'll ever date again? The idea made my stomach knot. Right now the only relationship I want is with my own bed, I replied. And maybe my therapist. She laughed. Good, she said. Those are the only ones who deserve you at the moment. Therapy helped more than I expected. The first time I sat on that couch, I felt ridiculous. Other women have been hit, I told the therapist. Stabbed. Punched. I just drank the wrong tea. There is no just in what happened to you, she said quietly. Someone tried to take away your reality. That's as violent as any bruise. We talked about boundaries, about how I'd learned as a girl to be easygoing, low maintenance, not a problem, about how those traits had made me a perfect target for someone who wanted to slip in under my defenses. How do I make sure I never let anyone like that in again? I asked. You don't have to become hard, she said. Just instead of asking, does he love me? You also ask, do I like how I feel about myself around him? If the answer is ever smaller or confused or less real, that's your red flag. It was good advice. I wrote it on a sticky note and put it on my fridge. How do I feel about me around them? One afternoon, nearly 2 years after the verdict, I got an email from an address that looked official. Hospital training and education. For a second, my chest tightened. The hospital. My mind flashed back to that exam room, the paper gown, the doctor's tight jaw. I opened it. Dear Ms. Carter, it began. We are organizing a training for our residents and nursing staff on recognizing subtle signs of domestic abuse and coercive control in long-term patients. Dr. Stevens, your former internist, suggested your story might be instructive if you feel comfortable sharing it in a controlled, private session. There is no pressure. Please let us know if you would be open to participating. I stared at the screen. The idea of walking back into that building made my palms sweat. But the idea of a young doctor, 5 years from now, catching a lab result like mine because of something I'd said, that mattered. I wrote back. Yes, I typed. I'll do it. The day of the training, they had me come in through a side entrance. Just like the day they'd discharged me to the safe apartment. Funny how safety often used the same doors. The room was small. 15, maybe 20 people. Young faces in white coats. A few older nurses who'd seen everything. Dr. Stevens was there, too. She hugged me when I walked in. You look good, she said. Brighter. I sleep now, I replied. On purpose. They sat in a semicircle. I sat in front, not behind a podium, just in a chair like theirs. No mic. No slideshow. Just my story. I told them about the tea. The shakes. The lost nights. The way he'd spoken for me in appointments. The way he'd called ahead to frame me. I told them about the blood test. The lab results. The words, do not go home with your husband today. I know you're tired, I said at the end. You see dozens of patients a day. You're drowning in charts and numbers. But sometimes, if you look a little closer at who's telling the story, you can save someone's life without ever picking up a scalpel. One of the young doctors raised his hand. How did you not see it? He asked. No offense. I hear these stories and I wonder how anyone could miss that many signs. I appreciated his bluntness. Because they didn't start with poison, I said. They started with flowers. With perfectly remembered coffee orders. With text me when you get home. If he'd slapped me on the second date, I would have run. Abusers like him are patient. They build a reality around you one favor, one let me handle it at a time, until you can't see where you end and they begin. A nurse in the back nodded slowly. That, she said, that's what you all need to remember when a husband answers every question for the woman next to him. After the session, as people were filing out, a woman in her 50s, one of the nurses, lingered. I had a patient like you once, she said. Years ago. Tired all the time. Husband charming as hell. I thought she was lucky. I still think about her. I hope she's okay. Next time I'll look harder. That's all I can ask, I said. Outside the hospital, the air felt lighter. Like I'd left something there besides bad memories. Like I'd planted a small, invisible warning system in other people's eyes. A year later, a letter arrived from the district attorney's office. When I opened it, a smaller envelope fell out with a handwritten note attached. Dear Ms. Carter, the printed letter read, we are writing to inform you that the appeal in State v. Carter has been denied. The conviction stands. The defendant will serve the remainder of his sentence as ordered. I exhaled slowly. I hadn't even known I'd been holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. For him to wheedle his way into a lighter sentence. For some technicality to let him slip out. The handwritten note was from Anna. Thought you'd like to see this in writing, she'd scribbled. You did good. Be well. I folded the letter and put it in a folder labeled legal. I didn't put it in a drawer. I left it on a shelf where I could see it when I needed to. A physical reminder, you weren't crazy. He was caught. One day, about 3 years after everything started, I was at a small support group Karen had nudged me into. Just try it once, she'd said. If you hate it, don't go back. It was in the basement of a community center. Fluorescent lights. Stacks of chairs. But the women in that circle, they were some of the bravest people I'd ever met. There was a woman whose husband had controlled every penny she spent. Another whose partner had never raised a hand but destroyed every painting she made, one by one, until she forgot she was an artist. Another whose mother-in-law had convinced her she was a bad mother for so long she believed it. We sat in a circle and traded tiny pieces of truth. One woman turned to me and said, "How did you know it was time to leave?" I thought about the doctor's face. The lab results. The words, "Do not go home with your husband today." When my blood told me I was in danger, I said. For years, people told me I was overreacting, that I was sensitive, dramatic. When the numbers on a lab sheet backed up my fear, I couldn't argue with that. It was like my own body testified on my behalf. The group leader nodded. Sometimes the proof doesn't come in words, she said. It comes in bruises, bank statements, deleted messages, lab results. Whatever form it takes, believe it. That night, as I drove home, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered on speaker, just in case. Hello. Hi, is this Laura? A hesitant female voice asked. Yes, I said. Who is this? My name is Emily, she said. You don't know me. I got your number from Karen. She asked if it was okay to give it out, said you might be willing to talk. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Talk about what? I asked, though I already knew. About him, she said. Daniel. My heart stuttered. How do you? I began. My sister was engaged to him, she blurted. Rachel. Years ago. We never really understood what happened. The police came by recently. Told us about your case. About the drugs. About the pattern. I wanted to say thank you. For surviving. For testifying. For making someone listen. I pulled the car over to the side of the road. My hands were shaking too much to drive. I'm so sorry, I said. About Rachel. I saw her picture. She deserved so much better. We all thought she was just clumsy, Emily said. Overworked. Her fiancé said she was under a lot of stress. He cried at the funeral. I hugged him. I feel sick about that now. You didn't know, I said. None of us did. That's how he worked. There was a long pause. Do you ever stop feeling stupid? She asked quietly. For believing him? For not seeing it? I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake replaying conversations, catching red flags in hindsight. Some days are better than others, I said. But I try to remember this. We believed him because we were decent. Because we thought people meant what they said. That's not stupidity. That's how the world is supposed to work. His abuse doesn't turn our kindness into a flaw. It turns his choices into a crime. She sniffed. They can't charge him for her, she said. I know that. Too much time. Not enough proof. But knowing he's in there for you, it helps. Knowing you're out here, remembering her as more than just the one who fell down the stairs, that helps me, I replied. We talked for an hour. About Rachel's laugh. About my tea. About how two women who'd never met had been living in the shadow of the same man. When we hung up, I sat in my parked car and looked up at the sky. The stars were faint, drowned a little by city lights, but they were there. It struck me then how many invisible threads had come together to pull me out of that house. A doctor who really looked. a social worker who didn't flinch, a sister who picked up the phone, a detective who saw patterns, a mother who finally chose truth over blood, a stranger named Rachel whose unfinished story had warned everyone too late for her, just in time for me. People talk about closure like it's a door that slams shut. I don't think it is. For me, it's more like a series of windows that slowly open, letting out stale air, letting in light, letting you see that the world is bigger than the room you were trapped in. Years later, I started sharing my story more publicly. Not with my real name at first. In anonymous forums. On channels like the one you're listening to now. Places where other people type late at night, "Am I crazy, or is this not okay?" If you're one of them, and you've made it this far, I want to tell you something very simple. If you feel smaller around someone who claims to love you, that is not love. If you are more confused with them than without them, that is not love. If you are constantly doubting your own memory because theirs is always louder, that is not love. Real love does not need to drug you to keep you. Real love does not need secret policies and forged signatures to feel safe. Real love does not need you to be weak, so it can feel strong. If any of this sounds like your life, I can't tell you exactly what to do. I'm not your doctor. I'm not your detective. I'm just a woman who sat in a hospital gown one day and heard a doctor say, "Do not go home with your husband today." I listened. I got out. It was messy. It was terrifying. It was nothing like the movies. But I am here. Breathing. Drinking tea I made myself. Paying bills with my own name on them. Laughing with people who see me as a whole person, not a project to manage. If this story is a warning for you, I hope you hear it in time. And if it's a mirror, for the woman who already left and is still blaming herself, I hope you see one thing clearly. You were not crazy. You were not too much. You were not ungrateful. You were targeted. You survived. And somewhere in a file cabinet or a hard drive or a lab report, there is a line of numbers that tell the truth that your heart already knew. Believe that. Believe yourself. The rest will follow. If you're still here, listening to my voice in your head, that means one more thing. You already know something isn't right. Maybe it's not as dramatic as a doctor locking the door and saying, "Don't go home." Maybe it's smaller. The way your partner grabs your phone when it buzzes. The way your mother-in-law weighs every bite you eat. The way your perfect boyfriend never lets you talk to the waiter yourself. We're trained, especially as women, to smooth those moments over. To laugh them off. To say, "He's just protective. She's just old-fashioned. I'm just sensitive." That word just is how we shrink ourselves until we almost disappear. If my story does anything for you, I hope it makes one word louder in your mind the next time your gut twists. Why? Why does he need to answer every question for me? Why does she need to know every password? Why does he get angry when I see my family? Why does he bring me things to drink and watch until the glass is empty? You don't need a medical degree or a detective's badge to ask that. You just need to be brave enough to hear the answer, even if it scares you. The day the doctor told me not to go home, I could have laughed it off. I could have said, "You don't know him like I do. He loves me." I could have walked out of that building, climbed into his car, and smiled as he handed me a travel mug to calm my nerves. I played that version of the story in my head 100 times. In every single one, it ends badly. Maybe not that night. Maybe not that week. But eventually. A fall down the stairs. A car accident. A quiet, tragic loss. People cluck their tongues over for a day and then forget. Somewhere in a file, there would be notes he helped write. Wife was unstable. Wife was paranoid. Husband is devastated. And Rachel's name would still be just a sad anecdote no one learned from. That didn't happen. Because one person in a white coat decided numbers on a screen mattered more than a charming man's tears. Because one social worker decided my confusion wasn't an inconvenience, but a clue. Because one detective decided to reopen an old, dusty file. And because, in the most important 5 seconds of my life, I listened to the voice that said, "This is wrong," instead of the one that said, "Don't make a scene." I won't pretend it was easy after that. Leaving someone like him doesn't immediately silence his voice in your head. For a long time, when something went wrong, my first thought was still, he was right. I can't do this without him. Bills. Car trouble. A leaky pipe. Things he used to fix with a sigh designed to make me feel helpless. The first time I called a plumber myself, I was weirdly nervous. The first time I sat in a bank and changed my account access, my hands shook more than they had on the witness stand. Healing doesn't look heroic. Most days, it's a series of boring, ordinary choices made without fear. Cooking for yourself because you're finally hungry on your own terms. Going for a walk because you wanna, not because someone is timing your steps. Turning off your phone at night and setting it where only you can reach it. Making a doctor's appointment, walking in alone, and answering every question in your own words. Little by little, those moments add up. They turn into a life that doesn't feel like a story someone else is writing. If you're wondering what happened to him beyond the sentence and the appeal, I'll tell you this much. He still tells his version to anyone who will listen. In his story, he's the victim. The loving husband betrayed by a hysterical wife and a biased system. There will always be people who believe him. That used to bother me. I wanted the whole world to know the real him. To see through the act. To hate him like I did. Then I realized something that finally set me free. I don't need everyone to see him clearly. I just need the right people to see me clearly. My doctor did. My sister did. The social worker did. The detective did. The jury did. I do. That's enough. The rest is noise. One day, maybe years from now, he'll step out of that prison gate. He'll breathe free air and look for someone new who laughs at the right jokes and confuses control for care. I can't stop that from here. But there will be a file. And a record. And a pattern on paper no one can pretend isn't there. There will be my testimony and Rachel's sister's call, and his mother's statement under oath. There will be doctors who sat in that training and remember one middle-aged woman in a plain chair saying, "Look closer," when he answers every question for her. There will be women listening to stories like mine, feeling that tiny twist in their stomach and thinking, "This sounds too familiar." Maybe you're one of them. If you are, I'm not going to tell you to pack a bag tonight and run. I don't know your situation. I don't know your bank account, your kids, your immigration status, your health. Those details matter. What I will tell you is this. Start with one small act of truth. Tell one person you trust one honest thing. He scares me sometimes. I hate the way she talks to me. I don't feel safe when I drink what he gives me. Not with a laugh. Not as a joke. Flat. Plain. True. Watch how that person reacts. If they brush it off, if they say, "Oh, you know how he is, you've learned something." If their eyes sharpen and they say, "Tell me more," you've found someone for your corner. Build your corner. Brick by brick. Doctor. Friend. Sister. Neighbor. Therapist. Online community, if nothing else. Then, when the moment comes, your own version of a doctor saying, "Don't go home," you'll have a place to go that isn't just the dark in between his house and nowhere. I survived because a lab machine, a tired doctor, a burned-out social worker, a stubborn detective, and a frightened woman in a hospital gown all lined up on the same side for one day. You don't have to wait for all of that. You can start now with the only ally who will always be with you from your first breath to your last, yourself. Listen to her. She's been talking this whole time. I just hope, for your sake, you don't need a blood test to finally believe her.